This segment of the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast is supported in part by Douglas Outdoors, serious rods for serious anglers. Go to douglasoutdoors.com and check out their new lineup of Era rods that retail under $100. Norsk Lithium, the lithium battery that you need is just a click away. Go to norsklithium.com and check out some of the lightest lithium batteries in the market with the best warranty in the business. Mariner Sales, located in the heart of the DFW Metroplex, Mariner Sales has the largest inventory of kayak and kayak accessories in North Texas. You can also shop online at marinersales.com. There we go. Am I here? Can you guys see me? I don't know. This StreamYard, it seems like I have a delay on it. But anyways, if you're watching, listening, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me, and if everything is good on your end. But anyways, we're going to have a great show for you today. We have JR Mocaby. He is, man, probably, if you're not from Texas, I'll tell you right now, he's probably the best angler you've never heard from, because he mostly does local trails. I haven't seen JR do anything outside of Texas, but if he ever does decide to do that, I guarantee you will hear his name every now and then, because he is just an amazing angler. Everybody here in Texas is well versed in the JR Mocaby's accomplishments. So it's always a pleasure to have him on the podcast. He's been on the podcast a few times, usually just talking about tournament wins when he's got them done, which is quite often. So once again, he is on the podcast, and he's going to be talking about his pretty dominant win at the Texas B.A.S.S Nation, also in conjunction with the native Big Bass Power Hour. He won the Texas B.A.S.S Nation at Lake LBJ over the weekend, and he got actually the biggest bass once again in the native Big Bass Power Hour, which I think they kind of changed the format for this one. You can do multiple lakes here in Texas, very specific lakes, and I think nationwide. Not just whatever lake you wanted to. It had to be something like, it was a list of 30 lakes, something like that. JR probably fill us in. Wasn't exactly sure what it was, but either ways, he won big bass on that. So he took him a nice little check between both. So anyways, without further ado, let's bring our guest in for today. JR, buddy, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
Pretty good. For those that don't know you, give us a little bit intro on who JR Mocaby is. While you do that, let me get my beer. I forgot. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Got into fishing, man, as early as I can remember, probably 4 or 5 years old. Back in Illinois where I grew up. I currently reside in Texas, but I grew up in Illinois, and started out pan fishing like probably most of us do. Crappie, bluegill, maybe the occasional catfish and whatnot. And then got a little older and got a little more patient, perhaps, and started bass fishing with my father. He was a big tournament angler. Had a Ranger bass boat, jumped into some tournaments with him throughout, time as childhood and teenager and whatnot, and moved over to Texas in 2017. So after that point, I really hit kayaking really hard, just because it was a lot easier to, get on the water instead of having a bass boat with a big payment and all the maintenance and upkeep. I didn't want to have to deal with that, and couldn't financially. So kayaks was the next best thing, and I had a cheapo kayak. My first kayak was a Perception Striker, 11.5. Good, just an old paddle kayak. Nothing fancy about it, but it got me on the water, and it allowed me to fish these different lakes and bodies of water that, was a little bit more difficult to get a bigger boat on, and I could reach these places a little bit easier. And that's kind of what really got me into it. And then actually, I started working at Austin Canoe and Kayak once I moved here, and that's what really got my eyes open to the kayak scene, and honestly what you could do with these boats and how you could rig them up for bass fishing or any kind of fishing, really. And here we are. So we're hitting the tournament scene really hard here in Texas, and doing a lot of bass fishing.
Man, now that you mentioned that, ACK, Austin Canoe and Kayak, that's
Yeah,
yeah,
Austin Canoe and Kayak.
they were so instrumental in just the growing the popularity of kayak bass fishing or kayak fishing, because there's a lot of guys down central south Texas that do redfish and trout and all that out of a kayak. So it's not just bass fishing, but ACK was so instrumental in the growth, both as a hobby and as a tournament. The cats, which I forgot what it stands for, but it's cats with a K, kayak, whatever angler
Tournament series.
tournament series. That's what it was. I knew I would get it if I used my brain cells for 1 second. But yeah, that was the longest standing tournament in the United States for like over a decade until it finally ACK, left closed doors. What is it, like 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think at the end of 2021, going into 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
What do you used to do with an ACK?
So when I started out, I was just your typical sales rep, and then I work on kayaks on the side. And then I kind of slowly transitioned throughout time to a key holder position, which opened and closed the store, and then eventually worked up to a store manager position right before they closed. I guess they basically had to sell everything off, liquidate everything. They went into debt after they had sold it, apparently, and it just went downhill from there. But that's kind of what I did with them up until they had closed.
So kayak fishing and kayak bass fishing is not just something you do. It's really part of your life. You also own a small, I don't know if it's your main source of income or it's a side job, but you got J Mocs, which is repairs and rigging kayaks. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so probably about ever since last July, so we're not quite at a year. I was working for No Bad Days Kayak at the time here in New Braunfels and running their store, and unfortunately the owner had to close it, and that left me with a decision to kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. And I was working on kayaks on the side before that, and I just decided to make it a full-time gig and really put everything into it, and had the opportunity here with my living situation and my wife. She works fully remote, and me being able to watch the kids during the day and then work on kayaks in the evening. We kind of worked out a good little schedule that allowed me to work on kayaks and really move them quickly. And it's been great ever since I started it back in July. I don't think I've went with a period without having customer boats on hand.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a really big eye opener, and I'm glad I kind of made that leap and that decision to get into it and do it full time. And that's what I do, and it sustains my living habits right now. So I'm very blessed, and I welcome all the business, and I try to have about anywhere from 3 to 5 kayaks on hand. That allows me to work on some in between, like customer pickups, or if I have to order parts for certain boats. It just gives me some wiggle room there to work on other kayaks in between. And then, and that's been pretty manageable. So, and I have a big Google Doc that I keep everybody's info on when I get a new work order. And I think I'm right now probably 12 backed up. So, and I've got 3 on hand right now. So, and it's every week I'm picking up work orders, which it's been awesome. It's been awesome and a blessing. And it's been fun too. It's a passion that I have, and I love working on these things and rigging them out and doing a lot of custom work, to them, and just kind of seeing the vision from the start with the customer, and then I'm building it with them, and then them seeing, their eyes light up at the end, and it's awesome, and then they go out and they catch fish and they send me pictures and videos and stuff. Yeah. So it's really awesome.
Rewarding in various levels.
Actually, I had a customer today that sent me a picture and a video of a giant bass he caught, and I think it was his PB, but we had just did a nice Pro Angler 14 build, motor, fish finder, live scope, full yak power system, electrical work, and he went out and caught a giant off of it. So that was really cool to see.
That's awesome that you can do that. And you live in the perfect place, like New Braunfels area, that kind of central Texas, not really south, not really west. Because I feel like that's the Texas that has the more little, like, I don't want anybody to get this out of context, but the California vibe, where there's a lot of outdoorsy activities and a lot of kayaks, not just fishing, just leisure kayaks. You got the salt guys not that far from you, so and you're feeling in a need where how many people out there have their own business of rigging and fixing kayaks? So that's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah,
Glad you found that niche.
It's definitely a niche, and I'm right in between San Antonio and Austin, pretty much smack dab in the middle. So I get to pull from both of them cities, and then everything in between. And being right here off 35, it's nice. It's easy and it's accessible. And like you said, it's a niche, so not a lot of people do it, and that comes with a lot of business. So
Keith Villegas on the comment section says the GOAT. I'm presuming he's talking about you and not me.
What up, Keith?
But yes, you would qualify for that. I second that comment, assuming he's talking about you, right? So let's talk tournament, man. You've had a bunch of success locally. I've seen you watch the Lone Star Throwdown, where it's a field of 150 people. I've seen you win. I remember fishing against you in the KBBT back in the days. That's how I met you. We talked online or social media a couple of times. You really enjoyed my conversations with you. Learned a lot from you. Talking with you. You've done the Texas B.A.S.S Nation. You've done West Texas. Is this the biggest win for you so far, winning this tournament, or do you feel like there's other tournaments that mean more to you because of because of us? It's a higher stage.
No, that's a really good question. It's hard to rank this win. I really wanted to win this one, and I kind of pep myself up, before the tournament, and really wanted to get the win here. I like Lake LBJ. It's always treated me well, and going against the group of anglers that we went up against, the good quality, the talented anglers, the guys that like to travel, compete, and it's definitely up there. I think that Lone Star Throwdown win was really, really big, especially with that many anglers and just that prestigious title that everyone hunts for, at the end of the year down here, and so many people are going to win it, So that's been probably my biggest win, I think, if I had to rank them, the Throwdown. But then also my, this one's high up there because I busted the century mark. And then I had a win back last year, 2024, on Lake Brownwood that I also busted the century mark and had 101 and won that one. So for the West Texas division. So those are the ones that really come to mind. I've had a lot of good finishes, a lot of good top fives, but those three really, really stick out in my career.
Yeah, and Lake LBJ is such a fun lake. I haven't fished it. My sister lives closer there, and we usually go, I think, 4th of July. We go over there because it happens to be her wedding anniversary, 4th of July as well. I always joke around her. It's like the day of the independence, you lost your independence. So, but it's a funny joke, right? But it is a beautiful lake. I haven't fished it, but we go there every year, and I loved it. Marble Falls area is very nice. How popular, or how not popular? Oh yeah, how popular is it for kayak bass fishing? Is this like talk about Lake Fork, right? Like the quintessential Texas lake. Compared to that, where does LBJ stack?
Well, it doesn't have that appeal that like Lake Fork or Rayburn or any of those kind of lakes have, but it kind of flies under the radar. There is a lot of big fish in it, a lot of big bass. You see double digits coming out of there every year, it seems like. And there are a lot of local events out there. It's one of those places that tends to hold water. So, and with our lakes right now over here, depending on where you go, you may or may not be able to launch. So that's one of the bodies of water that usually is steady pool. And you can guarantee, there's mini ramps on the lake all over from top to bottom, side to side. And you can kind of spread out. So it's a really good kayak lake, really good tournament lake. It just depends on when you're there because it is a little, it gets kind of sporty during the recreational time of year.
Yeah, that's the thing about it that I find interesting. Like I said, I've visited Joey riding with my sister and husband, and it's in summer. But I was like, man, I would hate to fish here with so many pleasure boats and jet skis and wakeboarders. Is it as bad as I I perceived, or is it, is it there plenty of space to move around? How do you rank it as far as, dealing with pleasure boaters and jet skis and all that?
Um, so yes, it's there is a lot of little nooks and crannies all over the lake, a lot of backwaters, a
Yeah.
lot of canals. You got two major river systems that flow into the lake, the Llano and the Colorado.
Yeah.
So you've got options to kind of get out of the elements and out of the wake per se, but at certain times of the year, they may or may not be back in those areas. So it kind of forces you to fish out in areas you probably shouldn't be, but that's kind of where the fish are, especially the points, the first drop offs, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things that you could get out of the way and get tucked up if you needed to, whether it was weather related or recreational traffic, which honestly, we were out there last, that was Cinco de Mayo, I believe, weekend. So it
Yeah.
honestly, more towards the middle of the day, it was getting pretty sporty. If you were on the main channel or near the main lake in any of those areas, it did get a little sporty.
And it does have that, like you mentioned, it is part of the Colorado River system, so it does kind of feel like not like your typical like reservoir, but more like a river. Like the times that I've gone there, again, not for fishing, just joyriding. I've gone to like the riverside, the Colorado Riverside. I was like, yeah, this feels more like a river than an actual lake.
Yeah, you're 100% right. If you go more towards the south end, more towards the dam, it kind of opens up and then it becomes more like a lake. But up in those arms, yeah, it's really, really river-like for sure.
Actually, is it coming up in the yeah? So I am actually sharing the screen from Google
Oh
Maps. So
yeah,
this is Lake LBJ, a lot of houses, a lot of boat docks everywhere. So it is really kind of like a party lake, which I am not a fan of when it comes to either fun fishing or tournament fishing. But like you mentioned, it does have the history of bringing in big bass. If I don't want you to share one thing that I try to bring to my audience, because I approach my podcast, especially when we're breaking down tournaments, as kind of like news media kind of thing, where or like sports talk show, where I want to break down everything. But I understand, especially with bass fishing, I'm not gonna ask questions like "Give me your secret spot" or anything like that, out of respect. I know a lot of listeners would like to get more on that information, but in general, did you fish like more the riverside, the south by the dam, or more mid lake in general? If you don't mind me asking.
yeah, no, absolutely. Keeping in mind there are there are going to be a lot of tournaments out here, and
Yeah,
there's definitely going to be more. And but a lot of people know where I fish out there. And I really typically kind of concentrate on the western end of the lake, if you will, the upper end of the lake. Um, that seems to be a really good area, and I've got a lot of history there, and there's a lot of depending on time of year or kind of conditions, there's just certain ways they set up on those areas in that particular part of the lake, and it could be like it was this past weekend, but that's kind of the area I concentrate on. But the whole lake has a lot of fish and it has a lot of good fish. It just I've always concentrated up there. It suits my style a little better.
nice. Is it by season? Do you change it by season, or generally is that where you're gonna start off pre-fishing and all that
Yeah,
for the whole year?
I'm gonna just put most of my time up there since I know it so well. Those fish live up there. It's not like they kind of fluctuate down into the mid part of the lake or southern part of the lake. These are all residential fish that kind of stay for the most part. So I kind of know what I'm going to be doing. It just depends on the seasonal patterns and whether you're going to kind of fish on the drops or if you're going to move shallow or mix it up. It just depends on what you're given, per day, per the day. But
That kind of works out because I figured, further down the mid lake, the further you go downstream, the more cloudy atmosphere, and the more jet skis, joyriders, and wakeboards you have to deal with. So the farther apart you are from that, safety and at least fish don't seem to be as pressured.
it's kind of works both ways because if you
Yeah,
think about it, if you are fishing up in the river sections or the near the creek channel, if you're up there, there's not a whole lot of water and it's all seawall, so that those waves bounce right back off. So it doesn't take much traffic to really kind of get it rough out there. And
Yeah.
so, it really gets busy all over, to be honest with you, from my experience.
Yeah, I can see that. How familiar were you that, like, when you had, did you pre-fish it for the tournament, or were you just fishing history?
I did go out there the weekend before, but I only went out for a half day. I had some other obligations I had to take care of, and I just went to a area nearby that was different. Just wanted to check out a couple of things to mainly see like what phase they were in, what water temp was, what it looked like, because we've been getting some fluctuation and some rain in the last couple weeks leading up to the tournament. So I just wanted to get a good feel for what baits I should have a good mindset with, and then also the colors. And then went out there and caught some fish that day. Nothing big. I think I put up like 75 inches, but for a couple hours. So I found out what they were biting on, and then I knew I was just going to hit my juice, my milk run spots that I usually typically hit. And hopefully it worked out, and it did, because I had figured out something real early, and that's what kind of clued me in for the rest of the day.
One thing that I wanted to ask you about, first of all, Keith Villegas says everything Kayak Jesus is saying I take as a gospel. Was that the look that you're going for, JR, or is that just the way you want to look?
No, it's just the way I want to look.
All right.
I enjoy it. I do get some flack from buddies and brothers and whatnot, but no, it is what it is.
You embrace
the
it.
fish.
Hey.
The fish like the locks of love. What can I say? They jump in the kayak.
All right, that's cool. It's not just the ginger beer and everything. It's just the whole ensemble.
Yeah, just the way it worked.
One thing that I wanted to ask you about the way you fish. Now, I fished a tournament in Lake Palestine. I can't remember. It was a few years ago, and I was keeping tabs on the leaderboard. And I noticed one thing that you were doing is throughout the morning you were catching a bunch of like 14, 16 inches. I don't know if you remember this. This was years ago. Talking about 4 or 5 years ago, probably. You were catching a bunch of like 14, 15 inches. You skyrocketed to the top. I think you were the first one to get to catch a 5 and be on the leaderboard. I can't remember. I don't think you won it at the end. I don't think you got enough upgrades. But is that a strategy that you try to, like, let me catch my limit first of all, and then I go big game hunting? Or is that just happened to be how it played out that time on that tournament?
I mean, typically it works both ways, really. The way I fish and my style, you can run into a lot of fish, or you can run into some big fish. So with that mindset, I kind of run high percentage stuff, and areas that are going to be, whether they're transitional period transitional spots, or just like I said, points or whatever, something that's different in that area that would pull fish to it or draw fish to it. And but I'm a tournament fisherman, and I keep that mindset that obviously you got to have 5 first too. So if I could go out and find the limit quickly and get that off my back, and then I can go slow down and target your bigger average fish, then that's definitely the route I would go. But like I said, my style kind of runs into both. You may run into a lot of fish, a lot of keepers, but you also might get your big fish too, doing the kind of stuff I do. So I just kind of go fishing. I just fish my style.
Nice. I noticed. I remember that stayed on the back of my mind. I don't know why. And again, that was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Lake Palestine. You remember that tournament?
Yeah, I only fished Palestine once, so I do remember.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I do remember that tournament. It was super cold. The week, like, we had that Snowmageddon or whatever.
Yeah, that was yes, that's right. I forgot about that. That was 2 weeks after Snowmageddon.
Yeah,
like the big one that we've had in the in the past decade.
Yeah, and the day before the tournament, I caught like a 23 something that was 8 pounds, and it clued me in on to what I was going to do for the tournament. But it's not what you'd expect. That fish was in 3 foot of water, and we just had that Snowmageddon, so you wouldn't expect that, but that's just what you run into from time to time.
How did you did on that tournament? Did you get to win it? I don't think you did, but
I didn't win it, but I did have a good. I think I may have had a top 10 or something like that. I was up there most of the day, but no, I didn't get the win on that. I don't even remember what it took, but I didn't get the win.
Yeah. I think it was Silas Garrett won it. I can't remember. I want to
I
say
can't remember.
can't remember either. But anyways, that was a good tournament. I had fun in that tournament. I think that's where I met Rolando Nandin at the boat ramp. The very first time I met him. But going back to LBJ, so we talked a little bit about pre-fishing. Take me through your tournament day. How did the day started off? Like, what were you throwing? What was working? What if there's anything that wasn't working? What was not working? And what changes and did you make throughout the day?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the get go, pre-tourney, I thought I was going to try to find a shad spawn. I was going to try to find a good area that would be going on. And then I had some areas in mind that were really good shad spawn areas that were hard banks that fish really push bait up on. And so with that mindset, I hit one spot in the morning that's always a good keeper spot, if you will. I mean, I've caught some 18s and 19s out of there, but for the most part, it's a lot of 14 to 16-inch fish, and it's kind of on the way to the milk run spot. So I go there, usually make about 5-10 casts real quick, because I'm really wanting to get to a couple different areas down lake, those high percentage spots that are at those key feeding times, and especially if you have a shad spawn going on, it's only going on for so many hours of the day. It's usually before the sun comes up. Once the sun comes out, that's kind of when it slows down. So keeping that in mind, I knew I had to kind of be quick with my casts, accurate with my casts, and then just keep moving and getting to those areas and not get distracted. So I roll up to my first spot, and I actually tried something a little bit different for this tournament. So usually I throw a Chatterbait Elite Evo, which is the full size, not even the tungsten size. But what I wanted to do was downsize this tournament because of the shad spawn that I thought was going on. And so I downsized to the Mini Max OG, and it was the first time I'd ever thrown this bait, but I've heard nothing but good things about it, and I couldn't get it firing. Like, I don't know what was going on. I kept throwing it out there, and I had to really pop it to get it going, and it seemed like it would kind of get off track, and I didn't like the action immediately. So I made like maybe 5 casts with it, and I cut it off immediately and put on the regular Elite Evo half ounce, and started chucking that around, and didn't get anything on that either. So I ran over to the next spot, which was maybe a football field down the way, and picked up the topwater, little whopper plopper, little bone color whopper plopper, which is a great shad imitator. It's a great shad spawn imitator.
Yeah.
And when fish are targeting those fish, they're already pushing them up to the surface. So me throwing that bait in areas that are really, one, high percentage, two, have a hard bank, and something that they could really just bust those fish up on, and there's only one way for it to go. And so I make maybe a handful of casts, under 5 casts up on this point, and I hooked my first one, which was a 20-incher. And this fish crushed it. It ate it completely, and I felt good about it when I was fighting it because it started being acrobatic and jumping a couple times. And my immediate thought was, okay, you got to keep this fish down, and we're getting ready to lose this fish, and it's first thing here in the morning. And those are one of those fish you got to have. So I played her out for a little bit, finally got her in the net, put her on there, and 20 inches on the nose. So that was the first fish of the day, and that kind of took a lot of pressure off right there, because that's one is going to stay in your 5-fish limit. I keep chucking this bait, probably another 5 minutes. Again, right off of the corner of a seawall, boom, there's a 17-incher. Smokes the same bait. And so now I'm feeling real good. I've got 2 fish, a 20 and then a 17. And I knew 17 would be on the smaller side if I was going to do good. That had to be one of my smaller fish. So I was okay with it. And then I roll around, and this is where I hook that big fish, the kicker fish. I throw the same bait, and it's kind of cool. So back in the seawall, it kind of created like a little V, and I was coming up to the mouth of the V, and I chuck it back up into this corner, and I didn't see the bait because it was around the wall, so I couldn't physically see where my bait was. I heard it hit the water, and then I heard the fish just demolish it. So I lean into the fish, and I'm fighting this fish, and right at the hook set, I don't think it's real big, just the way it was fighting, and it came up, and I quickly saw how big it was, and I got down to my kayak, and I was trying to hold this fish down, but there's only so much you can do with a fish like that, 23.75, and that weighed 7.7 pounds. And that was my kicker. And again, I knew that fish is staying in your limit, you know. And also, we're doing, you may see in the picture right there, the identifier for native. I was also competing in 2 different tournaments. So the Texas Bass Nation, which was your 5 biggest fish, and then also the native no limit big bass power hour nationwide tournament. A little bit different format than we're used to from native. But they had the no limit, and then they also had the power hour, which paid out $1,000. And that fish right there got me the first power hour. So I was very fortunate with that fish. So that fish, you know, awarded me a lot of money that day.
Yeah. It doesn't seem, it seems like it was a pre-spawner because, oh, wait a minute, post-spawner. That's the word I'm looking for. Because it's not like the typical football 23 incher, almost 24 inches. It's kind of like a little bit leaner on the leaner side there.
Yeah, and it probably was. It looked like it was kind of on the skinnier side. Who knows how big it would have been or weighed when it was full of eggs, but it was probably post-spawn.
Nice. Do you I don't know how native, I haven't kept up with the native big bass power hour. I saw that it changed to something like a nationwide kind of thing, like mentioning on the intro. But does it pay out? It used to be that you would, if you won the biggest bass of but not just the hour, but was it the tournament? Did you also get like some other prizes, maybe like a kayak or something?
Yeah, so usually when they have their live events, it's the same format. So it's the no limit, any fish over 14 inches.
Yeah.
And then also the biggest fish per hour gets $1,000, depending on what their sign up is. But also the biggest fish of the day gets a native Titan X 12.5.
Yeah.
This particular event, they didn't have that going on because it wasn't a live event, you know. So now you couldn't just fish anywhere either. You had to fish one of the 30, I think there was 30 pre-selected lakes kind of across the country that anglers could kind of sign up and fish their strengths. And so that's kind of how that format was. But unfortunately, they weren't giving out a kayak for that one. But someone actually caught a 25 that day too.
Oh, really? So yours wasn't even the biggest.
Yeah, no, mine wasn't even the biggest. A guy
What lake did they catch it out of? Do you remember? Do you know?
A lake out of Florida. So one of the Florida lakes, yeah. So and it was pretty neat to hear. He caught the biggest fish in hour 2, 3, and 4, and he had he had a 5-fish tournament that day too, and he busted 115.
Holy crap!
Yeah. So it was ridiculous.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah, I was lucky.
Maybe I'll reach out and see if we can get him next week.
he had a 23.5 in the first hour. So luckily mine was 23 3/4. So I bumped him out of first hour too, or he would have had 4 hours.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's fire.
Yeah, by quarter. Imagine having a 23.5 and not winning big bass on that hour.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
That is crazy. Wow. Yeah, Florida, especially at this time of the year, you know, this is where they're getting into their spawning area. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they even started. Maybe they're just like Texas. Maybe they already are in the post-spawn. Who knows? Not familiar with Florida bass fishing, but assuming by the weather, right? They're probably kind of like similar to where we are as far as pre and post-spawn. Trends.
They're probably all post-spawn by now, I would assume, or you might have some late stragglers, but they from what I hear, they spawn pretty early.
Yeah, I would assume so, depending on the cold fronts. I know F1 bass like Florida Australian bass are very big as you get a cold front, and it's very hard to catch from what I've heard. Again, I've never fished in Florida for bass, but going by what I've heard a lot of tournament anglers say, and local Florida anglers also as well. So overall, what was the bait that was working the best for you? The Whopper Plopper, you said?
Yeah, so that little bait, you know, once it keyed me in early, catching those style of fish, that I was just going to lock it in for the most part. You know, there was some areas that I'd throw some different baits that would probably work out a little better. You know, especially around docks, it's hard. You can't really skip a plopper, especially with treble hooks. So, and then you got cables and stuff under there. So there's just, you know, other better options that I would pick up throughout the day. But do you want me to continue on after that big fish and just keep going?
Let's continue on.
Yeah, absolutely. So So I catch that fish, I get it on the board, submitted, and I go around the corner, and literally maybe 2 minutes later, I catch a 14 on that same bait. So I've got 4 fish now. That's my smallest one, that 14. And then I roll out of that area and I go down to my next spot. And there was an area that looked really good that I had never fished, and there at the mouth of this spot there was a lot of like water that was moving from like underwater jets.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, this just looks like a good little area. You got some moving water, maybe some oxygen flowing in, or maybe bait fish getting stacked up. So I threw around there for probably 10 to 15 minutes and didn't catch nothing, and I didn't want to spend too much time on it because it was a new spot, and it just looked really good on the way. And then I got out of there and I went to my next spot, and found there was a little dock bite going on. But I was just catching small fish, unders, which were 14 inches or under, or under 14 inches. And then I was catching some, just over keepers, 14s, 14 and a half. So nothing that was really going to do good, but it definitely helped with the no limit side of things, or what I thought at the time. Come to find out that wasn't the case, because people really fished well during that no limit, and they caught the snot out of fish. But my main thing was doing good for Texas Bass Nation, and then possibly trying to win an hourly big bass. I didn't think I had a shot at the no limit based on how I fish, because I'm not really fishing for schools of fish. I'm fishing more for 1 to 2 fishing areas or residential fish. So I'm not going to have a whole lot of opportunities like some people that could go out and target a school, or an offshore spot, or a brush pile, or a point, whatever it may be. So I kept that in mind, and honestly, it worked out. In hindsight, everything worked out like I wanted it to, with the 5 fish limit and then the big bass over here. But and then midday, I kept picking up that whopper plopper, and it seems like I would get in these areas. Maybe it'd be like a point in the seawall, or a little break in the seawall, or something that was just totally different, and there would be a fish there. And it just was that perfect storm with that bait that kind of imitated a shad or a little bluegill even, because once I got into some of these areas, I did see some bluegills on beds. So that also kind of clued me in. Oh, okay, this is going on as well. So there's a couple different things that I could do and target them as well. But that whopper plopper was just a good bait to imitate either or, and also I seen bugs flying around, all sorts of things at the surface, so it just seemed like a good bait to kind of throw around. And midday I caught a 19 and was it 19 and a quarter, which bumped me up 4 inches, from a 14, and that I think put me over the 90-inch mark. I think I had 94 at this time. And then I had caught a 18 something that also put me up another 4 inches from that other 14 I had. So I was sitting at like 98, and I needed probably one more fish, and my smallest one was a 17 at the time. So I had to get rid of a 17 to cull or potentially hit the century mark. And around midday, I found myself way in the back of this canal, and it's all natural banks, and I'm throwing this bait, the whopper plopper, and I pull it out to the middle of the channel, and I see something waking on it, like something's coming up, and I can't really see the fish. I just see the waves coming behind.
Isn't that exciting though?
Yeah.
Like,
So I
oh my
freeze.
God, that's the best feeling ever.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was a snake, a turtle, a fish. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I stopped it. And then I had seen the fish kind of come up and nose it. And I was like, oh, that's a bass. It was really dark. And it kind of looked at it for a second and just exploded on it. And I set the hook, and I'm like, oh, this fish has it good. This fish is much bigger than I expected. This will put me over the century. I need to just settle down and fight this fish. And there was no horse in it, because I had seen how good that fish had gotten it, because it was just sitting there. Like, it totally engulfed it. It wasn't moving. I wasn't reeling it. It had a good picture. I just sat there and watched the whole thing. And so I was just fighting this fish, finally got her all calmed down, and she makes 2 big runs, goes back up into the bank line, and finally tie her out, and I get her in the net, and I just kind of take a deep breath, and I even said it in the video. I got it all in video. And I think this is the century mark, so it was a really good feeling, really cool feeling. And that was a 20-inch fish that bumped me up to 101 and a half.
Nice.
So, and that was all on the whopper plopper. And it was cool that, fishing with that bait, you expect to lose a lot of fish.
Yeah.
Or missed blow ups or whatever it may be. But honestly, they were eating it so well. I didn't miss any fish on it. I didn't have any issues with it at all. They were just crushing it and eating it so good that I didn't have to really go pick up another bait. You know what I mean? Like if those kind of fish are eating it, you should probably stick with that bait. So,
Did you what size were you throwing? Like, what size you think it matter? Were you using like the big Magnum Whopper Plopper? Was it a Whopper Plopper or just chopper
it
or just
was.
the original
It
Whopper Plopper?
it was the original Whopper Plopper. Yeah, and I do go back and forth. I like the Chapo too for certain
Yeah.
situations. I think they are slightly different. But I do have a lot of confidence in Whopper Plopper, and that was the little 75. Um, like I said, I was had the mindset of throwing smaller baits. Whether I was power fishing or whatever, I was willing to throw smaller baits like the Mini Max that I quickly took off, and then also that little Whopper Plopper. I threw a swim jig too a lot. I thought that was going to be a big player, especially back in those areas. But for whatever reason, they didn't need it.
Sometimes
Maybe
it's just that Whopper Plopper action that
yeah,
that the bubbles or the sound or the movement on it that just triggers that bite. Like you can, it's crazy to think because sometimes, like you mentioned, it is a bait that because of the dynamics of it's gonna come up at high speed, it's gonna hit it in a plenty of occasions. You can do everything perfect. It's just not gonna hit it
yeah,
perfectly, and you're either gonna have a misstrike or it's gonna come off not because you didn't do a good job on the hook set. It's just that they didn't hit it right. So there's that tendency. I was like, okay, well, let me go for another bait fish because if they're hitting that, but sometimes for the Whopper Plopper, it's just like it's kind of like a chatterbait. It's like that specific niche of sound or water movement that's gonna trigger that bite. You can throw the same exact color bait like you mentioned, a swim jig or whatever it is that doesn't create that action in the water or that sound, it's just not gonna bite it.
yeah. And that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
That sound and then the right conditions too. You got to have the right conditions to throw it, or at least it enhances that particular bait, in my opinion. But and then also the different sizes. You could also play with the different sizes and different actions or different sounds they have, or different bubble trails, if you will. So at time of year, and I thought that smaller bait would be the key, just because of the shad spawn or
Was
the
there a
shad spawn.
specific what were you the color were you using? Is it like a darker color? Because I
I
know
got it here. I got it right here. Let me show you.
yeah, also talk about that setup. Like, do you have a
Yeah.
dedicated setup for that, or what's your preferred setup for Whopper Plopper?
Yeah, so right here, this is a
Oh yeah,
bone colored
yeah, those
Whopper
that's
Plopper.
the OG.
This, yeah, this is the 75. It's got tons of hook rash, tons of teeth marks on it. But that right there, that little bait, stock hooks, probably should change them out. But I didn't have any issue with hooking up. So, I mean, they did the job. And then the line I throw this on is a 15-pound monofilament. And basically what that does is it allows, those treble hooks to really, for the fish to load up on the bait, get it well, and then the monofilament has some stretch in it, so it allows you to kind of play that fish a little more and not be so forceful with it and trying to rip that bait out of the mouth. And then a lot of it has to do with the rod too, and I'm using a 6'9" medium heavy fast Kistler rod. This is the magnesium too. It's an older rod, but it's a medium heavy fast, but I think it's a little lighter in my opinion in the power than what it states. But it also with treble hooks in that mono, it kind of it balances out well. So even if it is a little bit stiffer tip than what some people are used to, that mono kind of allows me to load up a little bit. So and I didn't miss any fish on it. So the setup really worked and really seemed to be efficient.
You caught at least on that qualify for the 14-inch. You caught, as according to 20X, 8 of them. So you didn't miss. Well, they're all in the Whopper Plopper. None of them came off.
Yeah, so none
That's
came
good.
off the
That's a
none came
good
off the
jump ratio.
plopper. Yeah, none came off the plopper, and my biggest 5 were all from the plopper. And then I did catch some other small fish flipping docks with like a little Texas rig creature bait, and then I don't think I caught any on the chatterbait. I threw it for a lot. I like throwing the chatterbait, and I talked to some guys at the weigh-in that really caught them on the chatterbait. So it's kind of ironic that I didn't find it where I was, but I also had a lot of confidence in that top water because it was just working so well. So I just kind of stuck with it most of the day.
Nice. You going back to the line that you pick. Do you think mono? I know braid is not anything I would recommend using with anything that has a treble hook, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a nightmare. But as far as comparing monofilament to fluorocarbon, and we know monofilament floats, fluorocarbon doesn't. Any other than that, do you think there's a difference between the monofilament and the fluorocarbon? Talking about specifically throwing a top water whopper plopper.
Yeah, I mean, so you can get away with it, like if you're on a good bite, like I was, just steady reeling. Those fish are coming up and eating it. It doesn't the floor if you're using fluorocarbon, that doesn't have enough time to sink, so you're not really going to have the issue where the nose is wanting to dive. It's going to mess up the action of the tail or the prop. But that mono really just it floats, so it allows that bait. Even when I froze it and I stopped that bait in that middle of that channel, um, the line was still on top of the water. So when I go to do the hook set, I don't have to, pull that line through the water and
That's
then
a good
take up.
point.
Yeah, so it's already there, ready to go. Even though there is stretch and mono, at least it's already on top of the water, and I'm pretty much instantly hook setting and driving that in. So I think there are situations where fluorocarbon's okay, even for like a buzz bait, heavier fluorocarbon. You could get away with. But if you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're going to stop and pause that bait, I think mono or even braid. You can do braid, but you better have a little bit lighter rod because
Yeah,
braid has no stretch. So you need to have the compensation with the rod if you're going to go that route. But I think with this setup, a little bit heavier rod than some people would use, medium heavy. But I've got 15-pound mono, so that had a good compensation there in that setup.
that's a good point. Do you go straight mono on it, or do you do mono leader?
No, it's straight mono. It's straight 15-pound mono. That's all I use this setup for is just this little top water. It would also be a good little jerk bait rod or
Yeah,
something like that, but I just use it just for that top water.
that's a good point. I was going to ask you. Eugene Mora has a great question. Because I want to get your thoughts on this because I definitely have an opinion on this. Eugene Mora asks, "No swivel at the nose." Now, before you answer,
Mhm.
I put the one thing that I don't like the Whopper Plopper, and I think the Chopper is a little bit better at it. And I'm not sponsored by Berkeley or River to Sea, which is the maker of the Whopper Plopper. But one thing that I noticed about the Whopper Plopper, you get one bite, and all of a sudden that I don't know what is it that shaft where it where the tail rolls just
Mhm.
get bent out of shape, and all of a sudden that Whopper Plopper is just turning instead of the tail just turning and creating just the whole thing turns, and you
Mhm.
have this huge um just what do you call it, twist on your line. Like half your reel is going to be have a twisted line. That's how happened to me. But I also, in my opinion, the times that I've used the swivel for whatever reason, I don't get the same results. But obviously, you're the expert on this. Let's get your thought on that. So you put a swivel, and what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think there's a time and a place for a swivel. However, I actually was not using a swivel. I was just going directly to the nose, nose of the bait, and I don't know if it has a lot to do with maybe the knot or me. I cinch it down pretty well. With 15-pound mono, there's a lot of stretch. So I really, when I go to tighten those, I cinch it down in one particular area on that nose. And it doesn't seem like I have any issues. I can't remember ever having that bait turn over or do this.
Really?
No, I don't think I had any issues. Every time I was reeling that bait, it was right side up, perfectly straight. Even when I would get those fish in, I didn't have to adjust it because sometimes, the tail you have to kind of like bend back because it's a little flexible
Yeah.
arm there. So sometimes you got to play with them if they're not true or tracking true. But honestly, I didn't find myself doing that at all, and
Really?
I didn't have any issues with it. I mean, this is kind of off subject, but I just thought of it. There was one particular moment where there was this seawall, and I paralleled the seawall, and I throw my whopper plopper out, and it lands right next to the seawall, and immediately gets destroyed before I can even move the
Yeah.
bait. So like right there, that fish bites it, takes it, and immediately runs out to that channel. And that I thought that was just a really cool part of the day where, like, you're throwing the right bait when you don't even have to touch it, and you throw it in that area and they just destroy it. I love that bite. That's a fun one. But that was the 19, I believe. So
nice. Well, there you go, Eugene. Answered your question. I'm surprised you've never had that problem with the Whopper Plopper. I have, again, out of the package, great. 1 or 2 bites into it, it starts just rolling. I look at my reel, and it's like all twisted line, which is not really, it's not the worst thing, but it's just kind of annoying to have all that twist in the line.
I mean, I have had that happen in the past, but it seems like it's been with certain size Whopper Ploppers. But I've kind of just been throwing this 75 for probably 70%, 80% of the time now, and I don't really have many issues with it. I don't know if it's maybe a different arm or maybe it's a little more stiffer back there, being a little shorter bait. I don't really know, but I don't have the issues. But I could see, you would definitely need a swivel if you started running into that problem, because then that fixes everything. But
yeah,
I haven't had to do that.
Good point. Yeah, I don't know. Every time I put the swivel on it, I just feel like the bike immediately. I don't know what it is, but it's not just not getting the same results. The Whopper Plopper made one that was even smaller, like the mini. I remember on the Lone Star Throwdown at Lake Belton. I think you fished that. I think that's when I first met you in person. In Lake Belton, and man, that they were just the same thing you were talking about. I would throw it up against in 6 inches of water right against the bank, and they would just, even smallmouth bass, it would just come up and annihilate it before I even started reeling.
Yeah, no, Belton's a good, anytime you have like a clear lake, certain times of the year, that top water is a really good choice to pick up. They can see a long way, if you got a clear body of water. So if it's something making a disturbance, but yeah, that's when you have the right bait, when they're just crushing it. You don't even really got to do nothing with it. You got the right profile, right size, right color, whatever the combination is, you're doing something right there.
I wanted to go back to the beginning where you're talking about, in pre-fishing and preparing for the tournament, you were back of your mind, or front of your mind, actually, were thinking about the shad spawn.
Mm-hmm.
How do you just go by instinct? We know at this time of the year, this is where the shad spawn is going to be. But in a particular lake, if you're going to a tournament, how do you try to identify if the shad are actually spawning during the tournament days?
Yeah, so it's all a visual thing, and you'll notice it because you'll roll up on a spot or a seawall or a point or something that's, you'll see shad busting up on the banks. You'll see them blowing up. You'll see them swimming around, cruising around, and big schools of them. And then you'll also see like just a lot of surface commotion, because they're right under the surface. They're right up there on the bank. And that's, some of the best times to target bass, because they're up there busting on them and they're super aggressive. And for me, it's really just a time of the year thing, and an instinct thing. So I fish a lot off instinct. I don't have live scope. Not that I'm against it. I choose to fish the way I do, more visual, and it helps me kind of key in and focus on what's going on around me. I don't get distracted. I do believe there are times when yes, that's probably a better deal, a better bite, and you got to go with it. But I like to just fish with instincts and know, just being very visual, and especially with something like that with a shad spawn going on, you have to be willing to do that. Be up there, be looking around, cruising around, and finding that kind of stuff, because you could really key in on it, and if you could get a couple big fish, that's going to set up your whole day. And when they're up there feeding on them, that's when they're the easiest to catch. Because big fish are smart, and you got to capitalize when they're eating and gorging like that.
That's a good point. Yeah, they didn't get big because of being dumb.
Yeah,
they got big because of being smart. That's awesome, man. Anything else that you wanted to cover about the LBJ tournament that we missed that I have not asked?
No, I think I kind of covered all the good catches, all the highlights, all the damage and chaos. But no, it was a good event overall. It was a fun event. It was cool to see, a National Trail like native and our local scene here get together and accommodate the same times, because they did do that for us. They that way we didn't have to like get off the water at a certain time for one event versus the
Yeah,
other event.
streamlined it.
They communicated. They made it very streamlined, very efficient, and as anglers, that's all we could ask for at the end of the day because it makes our job a lot easier. And no, they did a good job, and yeah, I look forward to the next one. The next one will be on OHIV next weekend for the Texas B.A.S.S Nation and West Texas Kayak Tournament Series tournament.
Sorry about that. Got my wife's
Got your
cat.
buddy.
She saw another ginger on the screen. I was like, wait a minute.
Right.
Who's that guy? Who's that handsome fellow?
But yeah, well, so looking forward to that one. But yeah, I think we kind of touched on all the good stuff. Oh, here we go. It's Corey.
Corey, guys in Ford, great dude, by the way. Questions may have been answered, but it seems like a shorter cast is that for accuracy or easier to get fish landed? That's a good question. So you mentioned about doing that shorter rod. Mm-hmm. Is that for accuracy, or is there any particular reason why you're going with a shorter rod? Kind of short for a top water. Well, I don't know. Depends on the preference, I guess.
It may be for some people, but like if you watch my videos, my fishing clips, you'll notice that most of these casts are very target oriented or very, very short casts. And, being that is a smaller rod, it's great for accuracy. I can kind of pinpoint and I know the weight of that setup, and I know I'm pretty tuned in with it to where I know that where that bait's going to land or need to land. And so with that, with that being said, I don't really make long casts with the top water. I think there are times for that, but being in a kayak, we're a little more stealthy. At least I try to keep that mindset, no moving around, sometimes turn your graph off, things like that. But, the longer cast on a topwater, you're kind of, you're playing a little bit there because they're going to be acrobatic. They're going to try to throw that bait. And, if you got a long distance cast out there, it's kind of hard to keep them down. You're just not going to, especially with a 6'9" medium heavy. So, and monofilament, So I try to make shorter casts, and that way I have a little bit more connection to put those hooks in the fish. And then, with that monofilament, I just play them out for the most part, and then I tire them out and get them in the net. So I try to make a little bit shorter, more accurate casts because I feel like, certain areas that are high percentage that I'm kind of feeling there's going to be a bite, and then I'm ready for it. So I don't like to make long casts unless I have to. If I see them busting, in the middle of a channel, by golly, I'm going to chuck it out there and, a country mile and hope that I get it. But for the most part, I'm just making short, accurate casts.
That's a good point. We got another follow up to that. It says, so a little of both. I feel like this is Corey Guys on 40 says a little of both. I feel and do the same. Was curious on if it's your mindset too. I actually do have I usually do a 6-8 rod for my top water whopper, mostly because I do frogging. But when I do the whopper popper, I do the same rod. I have one that, like you mentioned, it's the more on the medium side, for just because it's treble hooks.
Yeah.
Versus my frogging setup is more of it's more like a heavy.
Yeah.
Because obviously the completely different hook sets on it. But that's a good question by Corey. Corey, thank you so much for bringing that. If we have any audience questions, feel free to put it on the comment. We're about to wrap it up. I've had JR Mocaby for an hour. JR, while we get more questions in, I want you to plug in. We mentioned on top of the podcast your job, your full-time job, which is rigging and repairing kayaks. Mm-hmm. I've seen some of your posts where people bring you like the softball size hole on a kayak and you manage to actually fix it. Mm-hmm. Where can people, if they want to hire your services to either fix their kayak or rig their kayaks, where can they reach out to you? You have a website, phone number?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm over here in New Braunfels, Texas, and J-Mox Kayak Rigging and Repair. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. Feel free to message me on either of those platforms. Also, JR Mocaby on Facebook or Instagram. That's my personal page. Feel free to message me on those. Also, I'm on Google too. So if you looked up J-Mox Kayak Rigging and Repair, you can find my number. You can find my email. And, feel free to reach out. We can talk builds, repairs, installs, all that good stuff. And then I also do good recommendations on part lists, components that we need for certain builds that just a lot of people don't think about, because there are a lot of little things that you need for installs that people just don't think about. Yeah. But but yeah, you can find me on any of those platforms. But yeah, that's the easiest way too. And then, like I said, I'm over here in New Braunfels, so it's if you're in the San Antonio, Austin area, anywhere in between, it's a little bit easier to get to. I have had customers come down from Central Texas, all the way from Louisiana, all over. So yeah, it's been a really really big blessing, and I hope it can continues to trend in this direction.
There you go. So if you need to rig your kayak or fix it, take it to Kayak Jesus. As who said that? As Keith, I think, said it.
Yeah, Keith.
Get it blessed. Get a lot of fish in it.
Yeah, actually, we have been doing a lot of welds recently. I've had 3 I've been doing this week, and I'm finishing up with a gnarly one. But basically, the sidewall blew out underneath the kayak, and I've had to repair and restructure it. But yeah, I love doing that kind of stuff. People think, man, I think my kayak's trashed, or I think it's done for. And I'm like, well, let's just see. Let's just. I've did some pretty gnarly ones. The one comes to my mind was when I was working at No Bad Days in New Braunfels last year or the year before, where a guy brought in a Hobie Adventure, and it had a forklift hole right through it, like big old forklift hole. And he's like, man, I think it's done for. I think it's a warranty. But what do you think about repairing it? And I didn't have the right color, of course, but so that's the main blemish. But it's all smooth, it's all nice. It's the same material as Hobie uses before. So there, just because it looks pretty bad, sometimes it can be fixed and it can be repaired for a fraction, well cheaper than what a new one would cost you these days. So, and you get to live on and continue to use your boat. So,
especially with things that are going right now, not to get into the social political side of things, but the reality is everything seems to keep getting expensive and more expensive every time. So you might want to hang on to your old rigs just a little tad bit more. Felipe
Felipe's got a question here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do plan on fishing some more West Texas. Actually, I'll be at OHIV. Actually,
perfect. I'm going to be there too.
Oh, nice. Yep, I'll be there. And then I plan to be at the rest of their events because I have to fish the rest of them to qualify for their championship.
You already did, buddy.
Well, no, I'm talking about West Texas, not Bass.
Oh, West Texas,
yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, they take the top 20 in Angler of the Year points. So, and it's the best 5 out of 7. So I've got to fish the next 4 because I've only did Brownwood.
Oh, okay,
so,
okay.
But yeah,
by the way, that was the question for Felipe. Says, do you plan on fishing any of the West Texas kayak fishing events? I saw you second at Brownwood while you were launching. Definitely cool to see you in person besides online. It's definitely cool. Man, good luck the rest of the way. Maybe not at OHIV, but
I appreciate that, Felipe. Come by and say hi at Ivy, man.
I called yesterday. I was like, man, as every kayak angler, especially in Texas, does, I procrastinated on making the reservation, and I called a bunch of places, and I actually found one, I think in the marina. They were like, somebody just called or canceled. I'm like, here's my credit card.
You're lucky then.
I was like, golly, there's not a lot of places to stay around there, so I got lucky on that one. So
there's not. It's out there in the middle of nowhere. We got an Airbnb. I think I'm getting there Thursday night or early Friday morning. I'm hoping to Thursday night, so I don't got to make the drive Friday morning to pre-fish, but I'll do what I got to.
Well, if I see you at the bone launch, then I'll know at least I'm in the good spot.
Just tether up.
Yeah. Just follow along, sniping fish. JR, thank you so much, man, for coming on to the podcast. Good luck the rest of the way. Hope to get you on the podcast again soon. And hopefully, I'll probably pre-fish Thursday and Friday. Planning on getting there Thursday morning. But I hopefully get to see you on the water. And if not, somewhere at the award ceremony. Cross my fingers. I know you'll be there. I don't know about me, but
absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, Armando. Thanks for having me on. It's a real fun time anytime I'm on here, and it means I'm doing something right. So hopefully we'll be on again soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. For those out there watching, listening, remember you can follow us on social media, Bass Kayak and Beers, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We do have a live show every Thursday at 7:30. Not next Thursday, though. I'm going to be in OHIV, so next Thursday we skip. We also have the Advanced Kayak Angler podcast, a segment that airs every Wednesday morning. I try to air it every Wednesday morning, but sometimes it gets pushed to Thursdays. That's with Kurt Smith, where he talks about baits and techniques to help you catch more fish. And you can listen to our podcast on any podcast streaming platform, iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Crackstream, all of them. Not Crackstream. That's another thing. Anyways, big thank you to our sponsor, Douglas Outdoors, for their rods, amazing Mariner Sales, and Norsk Lithium. Have a great night, everyone. Peace out.